Mahatma Gandhi once said, I suppose leadership at one time meant muscles, but today it means getting along with people. If he'd lived past the 1940s and saw today's world, he'd more than likely cringe at those who call themselves leaders while he was reflecting on his words. For example, I'm just old enough to remember a time when, whether we agreed with politicians or not, there was at least a base level of respect for them because they were the people we placed in leadership roles. Because of that, they, for the most part, played that role. They argued ideas, principles, and facts. To my recollection, they didn't really stoop to insults, defamation, and inciting violence, at least in mass. I'm also at the age that I recall parents being parents. They were the leaders of the home. Mom and dad made the rules, and the children followed them. And if a kiddo acted out in school, they not only faced consequences there, but they also faced consequences at home. Parents, educators, and community members were the leaders, and it was well intentioned overall. We had role models and mentors. In other words, positive leadership examples. However, somewhere along the way, though, that changed. Leadership became toxic and hateful. There isn't one side or one group that's more guilty than the other because it's present everywhere, but especially in politics. The problem is that politics isn't the source of the problem. It's the result of the problem, and it's gotten worse every day, where there are seemingly no consequences for repugnant behavior. Truly, politics is a reflection of those who put the politicians in office. This is an absolution for our politicians, by the way. They should rise above, but they don't. And it's so common that we as a society have become complacent to it. You see, leadership starts locally, in our communities, in our schools, in our churches, and in our homes. It's obvious we have a problem in our localities and in our circles. We've forgotten the concept of grace toward our neighbors. We've moved away from finding common ground, common decency, and common sense. We've somehow started thinking, speaking, and acting in absolutes. You either absolutely agree with me, or you're absolutely wrong. Nobody seems to be at fault for this behavior. Why is that? Well, because accountability has gotten lost in this sea of darkness. When something doesn't go right, nobody has to be accountable for it because it's obviously the other person's fault, right? I have to ask, how well has that philosophy worked for us as a society? Well, through my eyes, it hasn't worked at all. And in my mind, the first rule of leadership is that the leader always takes the lumps. But if that's really true, who's acting as the leader in your community, in your family, and in the nation? I struggle to see that person standing up to be accountable. Also, it isn't just personal accountability. We have to collectively be accountable for the society that we created. This goes back to my previous comment. If there were accountability for creating a system of justice, education system, or even economic system that was designed or refined to hold itself accountable for the glaring problems that we have, we might not have created a model that teaches folks to not see consequences for their actions or decisions. In a vast majority of instances, there's political gain to placing a Band-Aid on the problem without seeking to actually solve it, and then walking away and saying that it was solved. Who benefits from this? The politicians and those who fund them, of course, because it definitely isn't the common American. See, privatized prisons don't rehabilitate, they reinforce crime. Food assistance programs neither lift people nor make them healthier. Conversely, they shackle people to expectation and many times limit them to foods that are ultra processed. Housing assistance doesn't give people a hand up, it secludes them to the projects. And at least in major cities, packs them in so tightly that crime is inevitable. Public education systems don't equitably fund schools, instead, basing importance on what zip code the child lives in. And that's not right. The word accountability really has been hijacked to mean blame. Just because you're accountable doesn't make it your fault. It means you accept responsibility. There shouldn't be shame in being accountable, as it has become lately. It should honestly come with a bit of respect. However, that is not where we are as a society. I think one of the problems with accountability is that when people have accepted accountability, the repercussions go too far. We've all heard that a prisoner must pay their debt to society, which is true. But after they do that, we have made it a pattern to continue to punish them, effectively giving them a scarlet letter that brands them a criminal. At least in the state of Iowa, prisoners are released under incarcerated status, and since they're on that status, they aren't eligible for benefits and don't receive medications that they truly need. After that, we call them trash because they can't get a job or secure living, and the likelihood they return to crime is very high. Recidivism isn't solely because of bad people. It's also because they have been boxed in as people because of their own judgment. When we as a society take accountability for that, when? Who will be the leader to stand up and admit it? To the opposite, what happens when the restraints are lifted and there are no consequences? When we're told anything is acceptable, when basic humanity isn't human to human any longer, well, we quit thinking about anyone but ourselves. Why is that? Was it because nobody was going to care for us or think about us? Or is that just our nature as humans? Good questions. A good case study is the 2014 Proposition 47 in California. Long story short, no consequences for theft under $950. Well, what happened? California became a haven for theft. So bad, in fact, that in 2024, Prop 36 was enacted, making tougher penalties, finally demanding accountability for those that repeatedly broke the law. It was interesting to see TikTok videos of people getting arrested, realizing that they'd finally have to face penalties of their selfishness in real life and in real time. But again, how did Californians come to a place where enacting Prop 47 became so problematic? What led people to believe that this behavior was acceptable? Instead of fixing what was likely generational issues, they just lowered the bar to incentivize what would become the aftermath of the law. Instead of addressing poverty, they openly allowed people to steal. Instead of tracking poverty, raising taxes to the point that no wealth could be accumulated by the working class specifically. And instead of building public assistance housing to help homelessness, reinforcing zoning laws that blatantly ban multifamily housing. None of that seems right. Transcending California, though, at this point, we're collectively agreed that mental health is critical mass. I'll reiterate, though, it's fancy to talk about it, but nothing of substance is being done. The most vulnerable people who are committing the most crimes are also the same people who are being denied benefits. When things go wrong after repeated warning signs, is it still the person who failed to get help, or is it the system that let it get to that point in the first place? The drug war was lost a long time ago. We can all admit that. But while our leaders allowed drug companies to market and overprice drugs good that would cause opioid addiction, our government funneled drugs into poverty-stricken areas of the country. While our leaders forgot about our veterans, they used chemicals to forget about the atrocities that they faced fighting for our country. We sat by and watched community after community suffer from the effects of addiction, and our leaders blamed the addicts. All of this came full circle on the internet, a place where words have no consequences, where there is no longer someone to say, enough is enough. It's been damaging to us, to the point of loss of life through murder and suicide. We'd think that along the way, someone would stand up and say that we need to do better. Someone would be that leader. That hasn't happened. And now people have become lycanthropic, and everyone believes that they are the wolf in real life. The effects have been disastrous. Just turn on the news to see it unfolding. We made things worse by not only feeding the beasts, but we started choosing them as our elected leaders, cementing this behavior into our cultural norms. These are the people we placed on pedestals and convince our children that these are the best that we have to offer. Again, regardless of affiliation, it's all the same. They channel our communal hatred and apathy and codify it as the gold standard of proper American conduct. How do we win by that? And what do our children see? They log on to YouTube, they hear verbal violence, they listen to the news, they hear and see this behavior alive and well in communities across America. Social media is plagued with it. Their own community is a breeding ground where neighbors have grown to hate each other over ideology and culture. They go to school and they see signs posted right across from schools and flags on trucks and homes with vulgar language plastered all over them directed at the opposition. All the while, they'll go see the adults, their leaders, go to their chosen community gatherings and profess that they are loving and accepting of all. Well, except those people. Finally, they hear parents say horrible things about other humans simply because their views are different. Where is the sense of leadership through this? You know, a leader is defined as a person who influences and inspires others to work together toward a common goal, providing clear vision and support. I see people in person and online daily who call themselves leaders. I see some of the same people name-calling, blaming others without looking inward and deflecting any accountability for the environment around them. What are they inspiring? What common goal are they trying to achieve? What support are they offering? Usually, they have a complaint with no vision of a solution or desire to guide themselves or others to realize it. One of the most basic qualities of a leader is one who possesses empathy. Empathy seems to have been bastardized into a weakness lately. I can't tell you how many times I've heard someone say, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. What if the person doesn't have them? What if they're too weak to do it right now? Why are we so angry with our brothers and sisters that we have to be hateful with them instead of helping them? Leaders lift people up. They don't tear them down. Well, they chose the latter. and offered every bait and switch that they could to keep our attention everywhere except where the problems reside. The biggest may have been the strategic use of the federal and state budgets to weaponize our tax dollars. Programs designed to help people are now targets by claims of fiscal responsibility or humanitarian efforts instead of allowing workers to receive the paycheck they deserve or the programs to be funded. Our leaders have failed us as taxpayers and citizens 15 times in at least 130 days since 1980, all because they can't compromise in the interest of those they serve. And while the focus is on the shutdowns, we historically see proxy wars being funded in the shadows. These are facts. We've gone a long way as a society, the wrong way, down a one-way road. We can turn around what's going on to take leaders. It's going to take leaders, not leaders in elected office. We need leaders at home. We need people who are willing to stand and say, if something isn't right where I'm at, it's my fault. How can I fix it? No more blaming, no more insulting, and no more violence. You may not be the person who did the wrong, but how can you take the charge and repair it? Be a leader, take accountability and ownership, and most of all, take action. Part of taking action is not allowing those around us to not be responsible for their own actions and words. You aren't doing a person, including yourself, any favors by not holding them accountable or softening language so that you don't offend them. Back to that quote by Gandhi. Getting along means that we need to have conversation. Does that mean we need to agree? Good Lord, no. But if we don't have conversation, then we can't find common ground. And if we can't find common ground, then we are going to spiral without any possible forward movement. We'll also never see anything from another point of view, which will never offer us growth or agreement. Then maybe we can exercise the ability to acknowledge that we aren't always right, which is one of the keys of leadership. All of this might require listening for once, which is arguably the biggest quality of being a leader. Be certain on this, guys. Your name means something. Don't let your name become so toxic that it becomes poison to those who will speak it in the future. Remember that people are watching your behavior, online and in real life. And while it's a beautiful thought that you don't care what people think about you, children are learning and imitating your behavior. You are the leader of your circle, be it your family, your friends, or your community. Folks, we can change things. We just have to step up, demand accountability. I don't mean just those in elected offices. We need to demand accountability of each other. We need to talk, engage, and understand. We need to meet people where they are, invest in our own futures. We can do this. We just have to work together. We have to get along because our families are hurting. Don't let the word leader just become more corporate jargon. Be one. This is your call to action. Be the leader that I know you can be. And if you do that, we all become better. And right now, we desperately need better.